make sure that you don't have a relational carnage in your life, because you need to be able to rely on people. And I can tell you that has been the cornerstone of how I live my life. I rely on people.
You are in your formative years, you know, in the outskirts of, as you said, Polokwane, and you were born, you were raised by a grandmother. Your mom is a domestic worker, a helper, and you finding yourself and you creating your own identity. What does that look like?
You don't forget where you come from. You know, I started my job as a journalist at third degree, and I think being a journalist really helped me with that, because there we were the voice of the voiceless. So we dealt with. I could speak on behalf of someone who couldn't speak English, but I wanted to represent them. And I got so passionate about the fact that there was such a large gap between someone staying in Hyde Park and someone staying in Soweto and someone staying in Mpahlele. So the differences really teaches you that actually the happiest are even the ones that are in. I decided I'm not going to stay in Randburg, because Randburg was the easier place to stay. Then I said, okay, let me budget. 1,000 Rand, I must send it home. Another 1,000 Rand, I must send it for my child's things. The whole money is groceries and everything else. And then I'm left with 3,000 Rand. Then I found a room in Tembisa, Rabasutu, big room, 650, everything was nice. And I lived, and I told myself that I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it. The fist must fall. Like, the gaps in South Africa are very appalling. You know, people can afford, you know, and even the policies are very weird. And I remember I was upset with the government, and I was like, we have money in the government. Why are we not doing this thing? So, and we uncovered those kind of stories. But most importantly, I then. Africa rise today.
Hello, welcome back to the Africa Rising Leadership Conversation with your host, Nomazibulo Tshanga. As usual, as you always know, that I am not alone. Today, I'm with an exceptional woman, Batlile Phaladi-Gumede, who is a group executive for one of the corporate communications and PR at Telkom. I just want her to, I think the conversation is centered around your journey in corporate, because I think there's a lot of young and aspiring, professionals that ideally want to climb the corporate ladder, and then they want to find themselves in executive or C-suite, leadership roles. The woman behind the executive voice. What are some of the early childhood memories and influences that has shaped the woman that you are today? And really dig deep into your work in terms of the work that you do, the support that you have encountered, and maybe some of the challenges as well, as you are navigating the corporate space, growing as a human being, and also being a mother and running your own family. How do you then juggle these balls? So the conversation is around that. Such a relaxed conversation that I want us to have, right? So Batlile, just tell us about yourself. Like, who is Batlile behind the voice of an executive, leading a PR communications department in a large corporation in South Africa?
Yeah, that's a nice question, because we always talk about who we are in corporate. We don't talk about where do I come from. And when you now when I again insert where you come from in conversation, it becomes, oh, really? Is that where you come from? But I come from Limpopo, Mpahlele. It's in the outskirts of Polokwane. It's a very rural, but now it's developing, but it was very rural. And we were not exposed to a lot of things. We were exposed to school. You walk to school. Well, I think at the time we were paying very less money. I think my grandmother was paying around 50 Rand for our school fees. I grew up in a big family. I had 7 siblings. I still have 7 siblings. We're 3 girls and 4 boys. And my mother raised us. My mother was not staying with us because she was a helper in Polokwane. So my grandmother was the one who would help us, feed us, grant money and all of that. But in those teachings, I think growing up with an elderly, a grandmother, she didn't even define roles within. I was ironing, my brother was ironing, I was cooking, and I was laughing with it about this with my colleagues the other day. And my colleague was saying, "Oh, at least if you were 7, you were cooking on the 6th day." I'm like, "No, it's not even like that." I was one of the oldest, so we were cooking throughout.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that happened when I was growing up, and but I had teachers that were so determined to make us succeed. The way they taught us. I mean, we spoke English for the first time in school, and it was that English that they will teach you in Sepedi. And when you get to university and these kids are speaking English, you're like, ooh. Okay.
The accent is accenting, yes.
Yeah. So for me, I was like, okay, what do I want? But I've always wanted more for myself and for my siblings. And my grandmother was pushing for that. But I don't know if she had a bigger picture or she just wanted us to get out of poverty and go to school and do things for ourselves. So it was nice. Neighbors also contributed to how we grew up and how we treat people where we're going. My grandmother was very big on that, how you treat the people who are around you, because you never know how they can help you. You can drop now and they will be able to bury you if your family says no.
And I know grandparents, they used to they loved that theme that, you can drop dead now.
Yeah.
And who's going to be the first one to help you? It will be your neighbors.
Yes. It'll be your neighbors, it'll be your siblings. So my grandmother was very big on relationships. Like, he was very big on make sure that you don't have a relational carnage in your life, because you need to be able to rely on people. And I can tell you that has been the cornerstone of how I live my life. I rely on people, whether the person works with me, whether the person works for me, or whether the person I work for. I treat people not the same. I wouldn't say the same, but I treat people with respect. So that,
So there are foundational values that you credit to your parents and to your upbringing, like such as respect, relationships, and seeing people for who they are, right? And meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we are in corporate, we've got the language to deal with the executives, but sometimes we don't have the language to deal with a cleaner.
That's true.
And I think it's very important when you've got that value of respect across. You kind of see a person for who they are and where they are without having to categorize people.
Yeah. And I think being a journalist really helped me with that, because there we were the voice of the voiceless. So we dealt with so many people from different walks of life. I could speak on behalf of someone who couldn't speak English, but I wanted to represent them. And I got so passionate about the fact that they were such a large gap between someone staying in Hyde Park and someone staying in Soweto and someone staying in Mpahlele. So the differences really teaches you that actually the happiest are even the ones that are in the rural areas, because we made our own food. We, when I'm home, I always tell my mom that, I wish I could stay here, but because it's so cheap. When I leave my house today, if I leave with 1,000 rand, I come back with nothing.
That's nothing.
If I have 1,000 rand in Mpahlele, I can tell you, yes, shop right now is starting to catch up, or Spar or Boxer. But those are the shops we use at home. We've never had Woolies. Woolies is in town. So those things, they really teaches you a lot. Start from the bottom. Treat people well. Wherever you go, is the people who matter. Profits, yes, matter, but the people who even make this profit. These profits are people. Like, companies don't make profits. People make profits.
Love that. People make profits. Now you are in your formative years. In the outskirts of, as you said, Polokwane. And you were born, you were raised by a grandmother. Your mom is a domestic worker, a helper, and you finding yourself and you creating your own identity. What does that look like? What does that identity looks like? And how did you then shape yourself, not to be drowned by the current situation, and have this big and bold vision of coming out and eventually making it into a C-suite level? Yeah.
So it's a long journey. I can tell you it's a long journey, because you don't forget where you come from. When I first started my job, I started my job as a journalist at third degree. And I told my mom, please resign. And I was earning 5,000 and said, please resign, because my mom couldn't see us. My mom would buy us uniform and then would buy us food, but she couldn't see us, you know. So for me, I was like, this was my goal. My mom must resign. My mom resigned, and I had a child because I was doing my internship, and she took care of my child. So, and my grandmother was still alive at the time. So life was going better, even with 5,000 rand. That's how big it was for our family.
But that's from appreciating
Yes.
the small beginnings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when I worked in Hyde Park, and obviously I worked with people who come from very stable families who have money. I remember we earned 5,000 rand. Someone would come with a Kia Picanto. Oh my gosh. Someone would come.
That we were earning 5,000 rand and you are driving a Kia Picanto. Where do
Set
you
up
get the
your
money?
children. I think set
Yes.
up your children. Then someone will come with a BMW, and I'm here running after Padco, and I had to buy a ticket. And I decided I'm not going to stay in Randburg, because Randburg was the easier place to stay. Then I said, okay, let me budget. 1,000 rand, I must send it home. Another 1,000 rand, I must send it for my child's things. The whole money is groceries and everything else. And then I'm left with 3,000 rand. Then I'm like, okay, what must I do? Then I found a room in Tembisa, Rabasutu. That was where I used to stay. Rabasutu, big room, 650. Everything was nice. The big room, and I bought groceries. I used to use USave. I bought groceries, and I lived, and I told myself that I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. So,
and sometimes those things are frowned upon in the black communities. Like, you are now in Joburg.
Yeah.
You are expected to live this large life without understanding, the salary that you take home on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So having that humility to come down and meet yourself where you are. Yeah.
I don't even think it was humility. I was in a do or die situation, honestly.
Yeah.
I think someone else will call it humility, but I felt it was a do or die, because when I left home, I said, I got a job and things are going to be better. So I had to make sure that I'm providing. So I was providing. My father also was providing, but me being in Gauteng said a lot. My siblings were still at school. Also, I had to send money for, like, because they had NSFAS, and NSFAS wasn't big on funding food. So I had to also share that small cake. And when I was a journalist, then I'm like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Because there's a lot happening, but I was very passionate about it, because there was this side of journalists that was telling stories that people don't know about. People getting sick, they can't access health, they can't access education. You know, people don't have IDs. That's why they can't access certain things. And I remember I was upset with the government, and I was like, we have money in the government. Why are we not doing this thing? So, and we uncovered those kind of stories. But most importantly, I then started looking for other jobs. And I went, then Oscar Pistorius allegedly murdered his girlfriend. Then Carte Blanche approached me, we would like to work with you. And they worked with me. That was my first real job.
Wow.
That was my first real job. Then I was still staying in Tembisa, and I'm like, okay, do I move? We're knocking off very late. And then my friend said, okay, let's move together. We can share the rent. So we stayed in a room. It was a flat. Someone was staying in another flat, and then we shared a flat. Then I bought a car. That was my first car. Then I bought a car, and then I'm like, okay, actually this life is not bad. My family's taken care of. I can move from work, and life started brightening up. But on the way, there were people that I was talking to. There were people where I would say, so how did you get there? And I was writing. I continued to write for magazine, freelance, and I made like 700 rand there. Then I'll send my siblings to buy whatever they wanted to buy. So it was at the beginning, it was hustling, actually.
It is the reality.
It was hustling, but I think I had a drive, and I was hungry, I guess, and I had the greed to build relationships and to maintain relationships. That is very important even today. I really am big on building and maintaining relationships and investing in relationships.
Yeah. Lovely. So you studied journalism. Now, what made you choose? I mean, I'm sure at the time you were in matric, you were not exposed to journalism, or because I know you must be from my age group. So I was only exposed that you are going to be a lawyer, a doctor, what else, a nurse, a teacher, all those professions. But who exposed you to journalism and why the route of journalism?
Yeah, so I won't talk about the story because if my dad watches this, he'll be so upset. But my dad wanted me to study engineering because I was on a science stream and we got a bursary. I got a bursary from Sasol. But I didn't want to do that. My brother then went that route and I was watching Generations, and at the time, Dombi was a good journalist. And that exposed me to journalism, and I saw how she was fighting for disparities, like a lot of inequalities. So I'm like, this is what I want to do, you know. At first I said, okay, and I told my dad, my dad was like, no, what is it? Be a lawyer. And then I'm like, a lawyer?
Even worse.
You know, and it's like, okay, be a lawyer. If you can't be an engineer, be a lawyer. I'm like, I don't like all of those things, you know. Then I said, okay, I applied, but I lied. I applied for journalism, but I put engineering as the second, so they accepted for both, and then I went to journalism, and that was the beginning of it, really, because. Yeah, it was who I wanted to be. I wanted to write, I wanted to tell stories, and I wanted to shape narratives. And it aligned very well with what I'm doing now, because after I worked until 2015, I said, now I've mapped out my career. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I started speaking to people in corporate, and well, everyone paints corporate differently. Others will be like, it's tough. Why do you want to leave journalism? And in journalism, I didn't want to be in the front of camera. That's the thing. I didn't want the reporting. I wanted the investigative part of it. And it was very fulfilling to deliver a well-researched pack and say, this is what you're going to cover. And then we drive with photographers and we covered, and it was nice. Sometimes we got chased, we got beaten up, but it was nice. And my last story in journalism was Feast Must Fall, something I was so passionate about. Yeah.
But how did that shape you? How did that shape your worldview about South Africa?
Journalism.
The story.
The Feast Must Fall. Again, it reiterated that there is so much. Like, the gaps in South Africa are very appalling. You know, people can afford, you know, and even the policies are very weird, because you're saying my mom is a teacher, she can afford. No, my mom is taking care of thousands of people, and the salaries are not even enough to match the paying of fees. So it was an emotional story, because I came from where we had nothing and we relied on government to go to school. Government wants to kill youth unemployment, but they are not getting people into school. And we are not going to school just to be in corporate. We are getting into school to say, what can I do?
Contribute. Yeah,
and what can I do with my skills? But we are not even being taught that. We are taught, you're going to do this, you're going to have an internship, and then your life starts. So from people from the, and that's something I'm really passionate about, that I don't think government is doing enough in the rural areas to take talent, because talent comes from there.
It comes from there.
It comes from there. If you see, now our kids are going to private schools, and I always tell my kids that, you know what, you guys are spoiled. We get you guys tutors. We did not have
none of that. None, zero.
Yeah. So, but what that story taught me is that we have a long way to go, and we continue having a long way to go. And I don't know who's going to come and change it, because
But it's a blessing that we've got people like you, right, that wanted to bring out those narratives, right, and challenge government, and challenge the systems, challenge the processes in a form of journalism, because that's the whole point, is to bring out what is hidden in order for us to show the realities of South Africa.
And we covered a lot of stories, like toll gates, but what that experience taught me is to translate any material, technical, economical, financial, into a narrative. I think that's what I'm really smoothing myself in corporate with, because I can translate a very technical document into a story and shape the narrative of the business. But personality-wise, it also really taught me resilience. You know, you have to get it right. I mean, you have to get there and find the story. You have to build relationships. You go to a family that just lost a very important member of the family, and you must make them talk. How are you going to do that if you don't put yourself in their shoes? So in corporate, you need people who are not delusional about, no, you are here to work. You need to understand people and say, but why are they feeling like that? Why is this person not performing? You know, and understand them and get them to be comfortable with you as well, to say, Yeah, because I think I think I also must move here.
Are we good?
I
Why
think
are you making our guests laugh?
no, because I think we expect so much from people that we forget to say, where do they come from? You know, when I started working, my English was not actually great. I remember one leader saying to me, and they approach it so nicely, but my peers used to laugh about it. So one leader said to me, "You seem to be grasping to use other English words," and I said, "Yes, because this is the first time I see these words, you know." And then they recommended books for me, but my mates would actually laugh when I talk, and I'm like. So that is confident killing that I think many people and many leaders must be aware in teams that take care of your people. If you hire someone, you don't hire someone to come and be perfect. You're hiring someone to say...
And for the job, not for the English.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And you're also hiring someone to say, come build your skills here and I can support you. So we are tough because we think they must get it now and they must get it now. And that is a learning that I feel I had to go through myself as well. Yeah.
I'm glad you got over that.
Yeah.
Because I think what's important for me in any role is your contribution, your influences, your contribution, your relationship, and just the heart that you put into the work that you do.
Yeah.
It just must speak for itself. So owning the narrative in corporate South Africa, right? Now you're in corporate, you've transitioned from journalism, you get into corporate. How is that for you?
Yeah. So it's very important to work for a company that you're so invested in their values and the values speaks to you. I worked for other companies where I felt like, okay, if I were a CEO, this is what I would change. And I work for others who say, oh, okay, is this how this thing works? So it's a learning. It's a learning and because you have to adapt it to your job and tell the narrative. But what I've never been quiet about is saying, I don't think we should do that. You know, I don't think we should treat this case like that. I mean, I worked for a retail company where you see some things were impacting people like me. People who come from where I come from, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. And I'm glad they listened because they started listening. And this is the importance of having multiple people in the room, diversity in the room. Because if we are both from private school and we are both from Sandton, if a worker, like a retail worker, is sick and now the company can't pay the person, no one is able to say, guys, do you know that a whole family depend on this person? If we don't understand, but if the diversity of voices in the room helps situations.
It does.
Yeah, so that's what I'm learning in corporate, that, privilege, no, yeah, no, okay. But the diversity in the room helps that, okay, this one is from the township, so she knows how the township works. This one is from the rurals. So we really solve problems with that diversity. That's why when a company is closed with a certain race or a certain tribe, you're like...
It does not grow sometimes.
It does not grow.
It does not grow, yeah.
Because we all think the same and we are all expected to think the same. So I like companies that have diversity, but in shaping narrative, it helps as well because everyone is able to shape, like everyone's story. You can connect everyone's story and make one story that will be inclusive. So I've worked in corporate that I related to, but some I didn't, but I had to put food on the table. But I feel where I am, it speaks to...
But also those are learnings for you. So you take something out of it. Yeah.
I do. I mean, some of them, I had a tough boss where I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so tough. But what am I learning from here? You know, and I learned a lot from those experiences, yeah.
Love it, love it. So in terms of culture accountability, how important is it? And you work in a very visible profession as a head of of communications, PR, etc. So how do you shift the narrative of the cooperation to relate to the audience on the outside?
Yeah, it's an everyday job, but you also need buy-in. You need buy-in from everyone contributing to that business. So culture actually makes profit. If your story does not relate to anyone, if we want you guys to buy airtime, but I'm not bringing anything to the community, then our culture says that profit before them. But if you have someone who would say, wait a minute, which I believe our CEO is someone like that. Our CEO is not someone who would be he's not someone who would go after fancy things only. He always looks at, wait a minute. You know, I was so inspired by this other time he had to prioritize events. There was an executive event and there was an event of our employees who are young in the company, and he chose that. And he said, this is where I want to be. This is someone who understands what culture does. Because if it's just senior leaders at a table, then the culture is, actually, we don't value you guys. We value hierarchy in the business. So as a comms person, you always need to be the eyes and ears for the company to say, guys, this is what's happening. This is the sentiment after financial results, after any disclosures. Every day you need to say, but this is the problem. People are noticing this and we are not resolving it. Because now people don't buy into companies anymore. They buy into, what is this company doing for the community? And what is this company doing for their customers, for their stakeholders? So things like that, what are they changing? Like nation building is very important for companies now. And I'm glad. And I'm glad because back then, we did not have social media. So we did not hear the voices of people.
Yes.
We had companies from newspapers saying, company XYZ, this is what is happening. Now we are challenged on social media. So the advent of social media is saying, I will hold you accountable. Yeah, and that's, I think that's the most beautiful, and it makes comms easier because you're able to say, guys, we cannot run away from this one. You know,
It is here to stay, and it is here for us.
And we need to shape how we communicate.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you have encountered as you are climbing the corporate ladder?
Personalities.
People challenges.
Yeah, personalities. And I think the other one is fighting for what you want, and especially as a woman, because I think my first real fight was when I was at ShopRite. God, yeah. And I think I was focused on, okay, I'm working, I'm delivering, but I learned that I had a sponsor in the business who was not overtly a sponsor. It's someone who would just mention my name and the next thing I'm added into projects. And then she told me something that, you know what, Batlile, you need to speak out. You know, you need to learn how to say, I want to be in this room. And because they were so experienced, I think they were 50 at the time, and I was just 20. I joined ShopRite when I was 29. And for me, I started seeing things as they were, because I would just deliver and I'll go home, and it's like,
and
no.
You would be happy with that. Yeah.
I'll be happy with that. But what I know about myself is I'm a hard worker. I work very hard. But I was delivering, and that's it. I wouldn't say, wait a minute, why am I not on that table? And she said, you need to be in tables, because your work can be carried by someone and they will deliver your work on that table and no one will know it comes from you, you know? And so you deal with that. You deal with people who steal credit. You deal with people who compete, and you deal with people who are so insecure. And as a female with a male somehow always compete with women. I never understand that in the workplace. And you're like, but you could get it. You're a man. But now the narrative has changed. They no longer, even if they compete, we are all now walking the same path. But one of the challenges is dealing with personalities. And I also think leadership is humbling. It's something, as I grew, I'm like, actually, you can't just dictate people. You have to listen to them. You have to learn who you're leading. Are you leading the unleadables? Are you leading mavericks? And I even read a book, I think it was Adam, spoke on leading unleadables, where they actually teach you as a person that you come last, actually. Forget about yourself. You need to make sure that your machine is functioning because of the people around you. So I learned that leadership is actually very humbling. My children don't even humble me like how my team will humble me. And then I learned personality, how to deal with personality. I learned that you cannot stay away from politics.
Find you.
They find you.
How do you navigate through them?
Very important, yeah. So those things are very standard. And you must be politically and organizationally aware as you operate, to say, which lines must I not cross? You know, which people are actually holding this company? Because they are very subtle, but they are holding the fort in the company, but in a way of influence, not just even operation, but in a way of influence. So if you know how to navigate that, I think and self-awareness, very important. Self-awareness, you go home and reflect and like, okay, did I handle that well? Okay, what can I do better? So I think it taught me a lot about myself, and it pushed me to read more as well, because I have a book for everything now.
Lovely. I love that. You've got a book for everything.
Yeah.
So who are the people and what's your take on mentorship, sponsorship, support? I mean, and who are the people that have held space for you when you needed it the most? And how important is it, even for young and aspiring professionals, to have those types of support?
Yeah, I had a lady at ShopRite called Sarita van Veek. She was a very strong person. She had a very strong personality. And I realized that I'm attracted to that. I'm attracted to leaders that are clear, that are strong. And yeah, she shaped who I, even today when I'm doing something, I remember this is how she would tell me to do it. And then I do it. She's retired at the moment.
Yeah.
But that's someone that really helped me get it. Well, I'm not saying that I got it entirely.
Yeah, but it's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. And then I met someone at BSF, Sibo, also a male, very inspiring person, very patient. He will guide you. He will, he will show you that, okay, this is what you need to have. Have you considered this? And he's not telling you what to do. He's telling you, have you considered? Yeah, these are your options. Have you considered this? For me, those are important people but on the way, I met people that were very junior than I was. And they really, every day I listen to them and I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. And currently at Telkom, I work with our functional specialist. She's a very powerful person in terms of being my eyes and being someone to say, I don't think you should do this. That for me is very important. And so voices are not senior. They are voices.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which angle they come from, as long as it is sound voices to give sound advice. Yeah,
I think that for me really shapes a person. Bottom, up, middle. They shape you because you talk to anyone and they and you hear, some people will talk to you and you're like, they're not my voice. And then someone will be like, okay, yeah. Even though you don't agree with them, but you feel like, okay, this is sound advice. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what's next for you? We've come to the end of the conversation. What's next for you? What we should be looking out for? And what's your next 5 years looking like?
I haven't had time to think about that. And I was talking to someone this morning and they were asking me the same thing. And I'm like, I haven't had time to think about that. Because Telkom is so busy. You are engaging, you are doing all of these things. You don't have time to think about your next. And which is weird because I always know. When I get into the role, I'm like, that's my next. Now I'm like, I've explored everything in the organization and I'm like, what do I want to do? But what I know is that I want to go into a commercial role.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I have no doubt you'll get there.
Yeah. I think I want to get into a commercial role. But there are things that I'm passionate about that I'm passionate about social impact. I'm passionate about bringing girls like me up with me. Those are the things that I'm passionate about because we don't talk to these girls at home. We don't talk to them at work. So, and we expect them to just get it. So, yeah. So while I haven't thought about my next, but I know that the impact I want is for, I have people that I've built relationships with, that I've carried with me, that are now in very good positions. And I'm proud of that. But that is the space I don't want to forget because it really settled me to say, we are coming together.
Wow. Such a phenomenal woman, Batlile from Telkom. Such a beautiful, insightful, and just a well-rounded conversations for the young professionals or the people that are navigating the corporate space, right? Want to climb the corporate ladder and want to reach a C-suite leadership role. Here's a woman from ground up, from the rural areas, and has decided to take a bold step and bet on yourself, and which I think is very important, and trust in your abilities, and then eventually contributing to this big entity. And we are looking forward to your social impact activities that you will be unfolding as you also learn about yourself and just what the next step is going to be looking like. So thank you so much for joining us, and it's been a beautiful conversation. Until we see each other again next time, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Thanks.
Well done. That was beautiful. Wow.
Africa rise today.
Thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in. So we are available on the podcast, Apple Podcasts or any other streaming podcast. Please do comment, subscribe on both the podcast as well as our YouTube channel, which is Africa Rising Leadership. Until we see you again next time. Thank you.